Hey guys, so I was at Trail Days a couple years ago, and I was hiked in the same or camped in the same area as this girl, Littlefoot, whose mother is like an addiction specialist, psychologist kind of thing, and um, we all had a bit of a laugh around the campfire because her mom kept saying like, "Yeah, I was telling people to go out and hike the trail, it would help them get over their addictions." And we all had a great laugh at that, and it's kind of was bittersweet for me because I have a lot of personal experience with that idea. And so today I want to talk about and kind of talk you out of if this is your thought pattern, going out to a long distance trail, especially the Appalachian Trail, with the thought that you're going to quit your smoking habit, your alcohol addiction, your whatever it may be, and kind of give you guys my experience with that, and hopefully it'll be of some value, and you guys will get some insights out of this. Going to be a little bit vulnerable and really open with you guys on this, so take it for what it is. So I was one of those people that went out to the Appalachian Trail. If you would have asked me in 2016 why I was attempting a thru hike, I would have told you to become a better person, and ultimately that is what happened. Ultimately that was the overall intention. But a big part of that in the back of my mind was that I thought it was somehow by hiking out in the middle of the wilderness going to get a handle on my alcohol addiction. And that is simply not the case. A couple of the reasons for that. First of all, availability. You can drink just as easily on the trail as you can anywhere else. There's plenty of places out there you can buy beer. Every town stop you go into, you're in a town usually every 2 to 3 days on average of hiking, so you can totally get plastered. You can't drink like a 12-pack every night, but you can definitely still have a lot of alcohol in your system and spend a lot of money on alcohol. So what would happen with me on the trail is your metabolism also goes through the roof, so it's another thing where you can drink a lot. I remember one day I drank like a bottle and a half of wine with a friend, and like got up and did a 25-mile day the next day. Like, it's totally doable. Hiking's actually probably the best hangover remedy there is, because you just sweat it out really fast and you're oxygenating your muscles. So yeah, there's that. You definitely can hike and make good miles while still consuming a ton of alcohol. The availability is out there, and the big reason that you shouldn't try to quit drinking on the trail is that it's simply the wrong environment. When I got into recovery, one of the first concepts that I was introduced to was HALT. It's HALT. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Those are the four main trigger points that cause you to engage in any sort of addictive habit, behavior, whatever it may be, whether you're in an abusive relationship that you're addicted to, or a lot of people with social media now are addicted to the approval of others. It's a huge addiction source. But with substance abuse in particular, those are your triggers. You tend to drink or smoke or whatever when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, or when you're tired. So here's the problem, guys. When you're on the Appalachian Trail, you're always hungry. You're often angry. You go through long bouts of loneliness sometimes, especially guys going southbound. And you're tired all the time. So it's so easy to get into these triggered states. So for you to actually quit alcohol or change any addictive behavior patterns, you really need to be in the opposite environment of what the trail provides, because the trail is actually really difficult. Physically, you do adjust to it, but mentally, it was way more difficult mentally than I ever considered. And ultimately, the reason that I left the trail in Vermont, I made it 1,700 miles down trail. The reason I ended up leaving was because of my mental state, which was completely fried. I was about to go into the White Mountains, and I knew that my head was no longer in the game and that it was time to go home. That was about 90% of the reason I left, and then a lot of it was financial as well, because I had spent so much money on alcohol on the trail. It was something I just didn't budget to have my crutch out there, and my crutch was out there ever present. One of my really good meditation teachers says all the time, wherever you go, your problems will follow. And it doesn't matter if you fly to India to go on a 3-month retreat, your problems are going to follow you there. And it's very true. When you go out on the AT, the problems are going to be there as well. And if you are in that position like I was a couple years ago, 3 years ago almost now, with that intention to go out on the trail to quit drinking, that might not be what you want to hear. I know it's not what you want to hear. And I'm not discouraging you from doing a thru hike. I think there's still a lot of benefit out there to doing a thru hike. Particularly, one of the best things being on the trail did for me is it helped me to constantly evaluate what I need in the moment. So, because if you don't, you're going to have a really hard time. But what I find with alcoholics in particular is we all have this, from people I've met in my personal experience, what I have met and seen is that alcoholics in particular are terrible at figuring out what they're actually feeling in the present moment and what they actually need in the present moment. Hiking actually did a long way. I had great strides in learning that out there. So my hiking experience actually ultimately did have a good effect when it was time for me to really seriously commit to quitting alcohol. It built a pretty good foundation of tools that I needed to do that. But it was not the environment, the place, or the mechanism by which I could quit drinking. And what worked for me ultimately was having an accountability partner. I was introduced to kind of an alternative version of AA, which is from a Buddhist perspective. So it's less from a trust in a higher power standpoint and more from a gain greater understanding of yourself through meditation and other things. And through that, I still was paired up with a sponsor, very much in the AA style. For you guys that don't know, because I knew nothing when I went into this, it was almost by accident actually. I was just looking for a meditation group and stumbled on a recovery meeting. And basically, a sponsor is a guy or a girl who helps you get through the 12-step program, which I never actually ended up completing all the 12 steps. I didn't feel a need to. But I have been sober for 15 months, and it's been the best decision of my life. And what worked for me is having that accountability partner, having that person that I didn't want to let down. I never, from day one, wanted to make that phone call to my sponsor and be like, hey, so I started drinking, or hey, I relapsed, or whatever you want to call it. I don't even like calling myself an alcoholic, to be honest with you guys. So I have a hard time with a lot of the AA literature, but just having that accountability partner was a huge thing. One thing I did learn about myself on the trail is quite often I don't have the energy to take care of myself, but when the group, like my trail family, was having a bad day, I had unlimited energy, it seemed like, to help them, to raise their morale, to serve them, to put a smile on their face, or help them put up their bear bag, or whatever they're having a problem with that day. I just had this energy that seemed limitless to go help them. So for me, that was a good mechanism to help me quit drinking, was to have an accountability partner that I didn't want to let down, because I have a lot more energy for that person than I do for myself. It's weird. So that was a big thing. And then as far as the meetings go, I tended to stay away from like the traditional AA meetings because a lot of that message just doesn't resonate with me. But I have spent a lot of time at Dharma talks and with hiking clubs, because of those are things that I get a lot of value out of. And my sponsor encouraged those things when he started to realize that the traditional AA meetings were having really very little benefit for me. He said, he's like, that's okay. Like, it's okay for your recovery to look like a hiking club. It's okay if you're a writer. Maybe you want to go to like a creative writing meetup and just share what you're writing. I think a lot of guys end up at coffee shops and they're just like hanging out there. They have a group of people there. So community is what I needed. And I had a little bit of that on the trail. It was kind of, that was another benefit of hiking the ATs. I realized that I had this huge need for community that wasn't being met in my life. Especially, I had just divorced like right before heading out on the trail. So it's like even my one person that I kind of had as a community, little tiny household community, was no longer in my life. So I needed to fill that. And I think in modern society, especially in the US, need for community is a really big one that is not being met. We're all kind of isolating. And on the trail with my trail families. It reignited that realization in me that, oh, this is something that I need a lot of. So with my meditation groups and that particular recovery meeting, that helped me have a community now that I could go to when I was having a really hard day and be like, guys, this is what's going on. This is what I'm having trouble navigating, and getting advice from them. Or just some days I didn't want to share anything, but just listening to other people that were sharing around the circle. 9 times out of 10, somebody shared something that I had gone through in the past week or was having trouble with, and other people would talk about it, and so that I could get the benefit of getting my needs answered and my questions answered through another person without having to even open up and talk. So what I would tell you guys is, if you do have any sort of substance addiction or anything like that, particularly if you're an alcoholic, because that's what my affliction was, there are so many alternatives out there. Like, getting help does not mean AA. Okay, there's so many other sources and ways to quit drinking. There's a guy on YouTube, Kevin O'Hara. I think his channel is Alcohol Mastery. Found his videos really helpful towards the beginning. And AA Beyond Belief is a really good podcast that kind of takes the 12 steps from a more agnostic, atheist point of view. So the faith-based stuff turns you off. There is alternatives, and of course, if the faith-based stuff does not turn you off and you want to go get help, AA is fantastic. Everybody there, every traditional type meeting that I've been to, even though the message didn't resonate for me, everybody there was incredibly welcoming and nice. And there's so many, you'd be really surprised once you realize how many of these meetings are in your area. Like, there's probably, in a 50 square mile radius, there's probably like 80 meetings here. I wouldn't doubt that number at all, of some kind, but you probably have at least a half dozen or more in your area. So you can kind of just be open enough to go to those until you find one that you resonate with. And it could take another form. Maybe you need a book club, or maybe you're really into tennis, or maybe you want to join a baseball team. And I would suggest going to like meetup.com to go find those people. There's like trail running clubs and all these different activities you can get into, because loneliness is a huge thing. Loneliness is a big thing for me, for why I would drink, because I would come home at the end of the day to an empty apartment, and with my divorce, like, my cats weren't even there anymore. I didn't even have cats anymore. You know what I mean? So you need camaraderie to be human. You really 99.9% of people need other people to be happy in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's how we're wired. We're wired to be tribal people. The Appalachian Trail taught me that really firmly, that we're wired to be tribal. That's how we operate our best as humans. So go find your fellow weirdos. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're having that problem that I had, which was I'd come home and just be so soul-wrenchingly, unbelievably lonely. That was something that I needed to address. So yeah, guys, I'm not telling you to not go do a through hike. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just asking you to be a little bit more honest with your expectations. There's plenty of good that can come out of it. Of course, just be respectful in towns. Don't go getting kicked out of 3 bars in Rutland, Vermont, like I did my last day on trail. That was terrible. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Be a steward for the trail. I've tried to give back and like karmically balance any damage that came from that night. But yeah, just be good trail citizens out there. Enjoy your time and all that. But I'm not going to preach to you because I have no right to. So I hope that was of some value, guys. I hope that was of some value. And if you have any questions, check out BuddhistRecovery.net. It's a great way to find Buddhist-based recovery meetings. Where's that book? Recommend this one, One Breath at a Time by Kevin Griffin. It's a really good book that kind of relates Buddhism and the 12 steps. I found that one really helpful. Another book that was really helpful was The Four Agreements. on just how to really think more positively and not take things so personally. Those are 2 books that I would definitely recommend on your journey when you decide, if you decide to take that path, or if you need to even take that path at all. I don't edit videos, guys, so I'm going to get up and turn the button off, and be really kind to yourselves, have love for yourself, and if there's anything I can do to help you guys, I'll try. Shoot me a message, leave me a comment. Take care.